So now what is the meaning of Nameif and security level? Okay. So going further, I mean, you understood that, you know, the router interfaces, they do not need Nameif and security level, but ASA would definitely need it under the interface context. All right. Now, what is Nameif security level? That's my next level of discussion. So if I take a ASA, generally what you do is you keep two interface or say three interface. Okay. And this is your edge device right now of your company, and this is going to your ISP. So the interface, just imagine that this is port number 1, port number 2, port number 3. So port number 3 is going to a separate, you know, zone. Let's say it is going to a switching network, a switching infrastructure which connects your company's servers. So you have all the servers placed here. And basically in the context of networking, I mean, you call this as a special zone called as demilitarized zone or DMZ, right? And you normally allow the servers to be placed in DMZ, which is basically the public facing servers. So you want internet people to come and access your servers through internet, and you place your servers on the DMZ zone. So this interface is going to DMZ. This interface number 1 is going towards your, you know, internet. This interface number 2, let's say it connects your, you know, might be your company's layer 3 switch, or might be your switching infrastructure, and from there it is going to your, you know, your LAN corp network, right? So as per deployment scenarios is considered, you normally place this particular interface, you call this as LAN port, but generally you will name this port as inside. With AS's context, I'm saying, okay, inside this port number 3, you will name this port as DMZ. And if you have multiple DMZ, you can place like DMZ1, DMZ2, DMZ3, like that. And normally you will place this interface with a name called as outside. Okay. So outside interfaces are basically the untrusted interfaces or untrusted ports, because it reaches your internet provider. You reach public networks over here. So it is basically the untrusted interface. The most trusted interface, if you compare between inside and DMZ, will be inside, right? Because DMZ resources are generally accessed by public. You allow their access, but you do not allow generally the internet access from internet to LAN or side network, right? So that is the most trusted one. So what you do is, in terms of trust, when the concept comes in terms of trust, it is actually represented with a term called a security level. So the concept of security level is basically with referring to trust. So you have got security level that ranges from 0 to 100 in ASA, where 0 being the least trusted interface, where 100 being the most trusted interface. This is absolutely important in case of ASA to begin with. So what you do is you go to the ASA firewall, you go to the interface, and you give the respective IP addresses, because all these ports are your layer 3 ports, they're your routed ports. So for example, the interface number 1 that leads to towards your ISP will have a public IP. So say this is 11.1.1.10/24, you assign here. The inside interface will be having your private IP. Say it is 10.11.11.10/24 over here. Even the DMZs will be part of a private IP. So say this interface you gave 172.16.1.10/24 over here, right? So this is basically public, but rest on inside and DMZ, you keep the IPs as private. Okay, private. Now, the interface, along with your IP address and mask configuration, they would need, you know, 2 parameters I've told you. One is the Nameif. So Nameif, you configure this port as outside, you give Nameif as inside, you give Nameif as DMZ. These are the names of the interface that you are referring to. Okay, and you need to configure the security level as well. So security level by default, what happens is this: you put any name to the interface, the security level will be 0 except one name, which is equivalent to this character inside, and it is not case sensitive. The moment you configure an interface with a name called as inside, the security level for that interface becomes 100 automatically. When I show this in practical, it will make really good sense, but try to understand this. That means if I go to port number 2, configure its IP address and mask, configure the Nameif as inside, and given the Nameif as inside with this characters called as INSIDE, automatically the security level becomes what? 100 here. Whereas if you keep the name as outside or DMZ any other name, by default the security level will be 0 on these ports. Okay, that is the most important thing. Generally, you do not want to keep the DMZs with a security level of 0, because DMZs basically they are not a least trusted zone, right? So what you feel is, what you normally should do is, you should actually keep the outside with security level of 0, because they are the most they're the least trusted, and DMZ falls between inside and outside. So normally you keep a middle value, say 75 or 50, whatever, like that. So ensure that the DMZ interfaces, they have a security level which is higher, higher than outside, okay, but it should be lower than inside. All right, because the most trusted one is the inside networks. They're the highly trusted. That is the reason they will have the highest security level. All right, so how do you configure that? I will show this to you. You go to the interface, say whatever interface number F0, say G0/1. You give an IP address with the IP address and mask. Then you give no shut to activate the port. Then you configure a statement called as Nameif. You give the name of the interface, and then you give the security level if required to the interface. This is my recommended way of doing it. Now, once I configured these parameters on the respective interfaces, the ASA will build up what? A routing table, which will have now 3 directly connected routes. So it will have a 10 dot subnet, it will have a 11 dot subnet, it will have a 172 subnet. In the routing table, you will also find the port number, but generally you will represent this routing table entry with the Nameif statement. So the 10 is going to your inside, so you'll find in the routing table the routes are represented with the Nameif keyword. Likewise, 11 is going to outside, you will find the keyword as outside. Likewise, for DMZ1, if you are given the name like that, it will be DMZ1. Now the ASA knows all the 3 networks as what directly connected as per generic routing is considered.